In the early 2000s, international advisors landed in Kabul to manage a massive reconstruction effort. They carried a set of pre-packaged institutions in their luggage: a central bank, a parliament, and a secular constitution. To the advisors, these were universal modules that could be assembled anywhere, like components snapping into place. Local leaders warned that deploying a free market system requires an invisible underlying architecture to function, a baseline of social trust, unbribable courts, and enforceable contracts. Without that evolved context, the system would fail. The advisors pushed forward anyway. The resulting system did not create a thriving free market. Instead, these new institutions provided a highly efficient mechanism for local warlords to begin looting state assets. These experts were blinded by the belief that their cultural institutions were universal formulas that worked the same way regardless of the local environment. This failure to account for context in Kabul mirrors a larger error on the global stage. We treat our major institutions like universal components that work in any setting, forgetting that they were designed for a specific historical moment that has already passed. The pillars of modern civilization, the market economy, representative democracy, and empirical science, function as legacy systems inherited from a different era. When you take a system designed for a specific scale and force it to operate across a complex planetary network, it generates catastrophic side effects. We are currently attempting to manage a massively complex global civilization using an outdated architecture that is rapidly reaching its breaking point. To see exactly how these systems function, we have to look back to the early 19th century to examine the moment this civilizational software was successfully launched. On a spring morning in 1829, a crowd gathered in Manchester to watch a steam locomotive hiss and shudder as pressurized vapor coiled through its iron valves. Human beings were suddenly moving faster than any animal on Earth. We had shattered our biological limits. The four new pillars of this age solved immediate local problems. Governance confronted tyranny. Markets tackled material scarcity. Science challenged dogma. Secular ethics pushed back against cruelty. These solutions were designed to operate within the container of the sovereign nation-state. If a factory polluted a river, the local parliament could pass a law to address it. Cause and effect were contained within the same jurisdiction. These institutions were effective tools for a world that felt infinite in resources, slower in pace, and where nations were mostly disconnected from one another. When you take tools built for a slow, disconnected world and scale them up to a planetary level, they can become self-terminating solutions, arrangements that work at a small scale but create system-wide failures when universally applied. This animation shows a scaling flaw in our economic pillar. Modern economies run on debt-based money creation, where every unit of currency is tied to the expectation of interest. Because of this loop, growth becomes a structural imperative, not an option. This demand for expansion eventually collides with the physical limits of the biosphere. GDP rises when we clear-cut a forest or when a disaster requires rebuilding, but it fails to measure the foundations of life. The system optimizes for what is measured, and we do not measure planetary health. Our scientific pillar suffers from a similar scaling failure. By dividing reality into isolated, measurable parts, science gained incredible precision. But we lost the ability to synthesize those parts and understand how the living world functions as a whole. These systems successfully optimized for human expansion by treating the natural world as an infinite, inert resource, an assumption that creates systemic friction when the planet's hard limits are reached. We are now caught in the Westphalian trap. The political incentives of the nation-state, competition and short-term self-interest, operate in direct opposition to the survival requirements of a planetary civilization. The atmosphere recognizes no customs officers. Carbon dioxide emitted in a sovereign territory like Ohio melts international ice caps in Antarctica. A financial crisis originating on Wall Street can instantly destroy the life savings of citizens in an unrelated nation like Iceland. Humanity is trying to bail out a globally sinking vessel using buckets, because our captains are only permitted to manage the water inside their own cabins. Our global meta-crisis is the friction of 18th century software crashing against 21st century reality. This creates a pressure to react in extremes, either by blindly clinging to these failing legacy systems or by rejecting the genuine achievements of the Enlightenment entirely. The mature evolutionary move is to transcend and include. We must keep our hard-won empirical knowledge and individual rights while integrating a new framework of planetary stewardship. Humanity currently possesses the power to alter the planet's life support systems. This creates a unique responsibility to redesign our civilizational architecture while a window for meaningful change remains open. What was designed can be redesigned. Achieving a wiser freedom is the ultimate work of our time. Everything else is elaboration.